Part 83. Modern technique suture surgery for the wound, so Mo Yan survived. After Yi Yang learned about Mo Yan's physical condition, he sighed that the medical system in this society was underdeveloped, and an arrow wound could kill a person. Young master, it's not that Xiao Doubting said something depressing. That General Mo really won't survive for 3 days. As long as Xiao Doubting thought of the wound on Mo Yan's chest, he felt a dull pain in his chest. Is it really that serious? Yi Yang was anxious this time. If Mo Yan died, Shui Chen would definitely not survive. Thinking of Shui Chen, in order to help him before, disregarding his own safety. Helping him stop the false accusation and help him get rid of the crime. Such a person who values love and righteousness. He really can't watch this pair of miserable Mandarin ducks die in the underworld of Hades or hell. He held his chin in his hand, and was silent for a long time. Finally, his eyes gradually became firmer, and he got up and walked towards the kitchen in the palace. Xiao Doubting has been following Yi Yang, and seeing Yi Yang walks into the kitchen, he is confused. He doesn't understand, at this juncture, how can Yi Yang be in the mood to cook delicious food? Zhen Yi was handling government affairs in the Xinghe Palace. Seeing that it was time for dinner, Eunuch Yun, who was waiting outside the door, suddenly walked in and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, young master concubine Yi has brought for you dinner." Zhen Yi's pen in his hand paused for a while, and he raised his head, suspecting that he had heard it wrong, and asked uncertainty. "Concubine Yi? It's concubine Yi." Zhen Yi couldn't believe it. Yi Yang even brought him dinner for the first time in the world. Is this the sun hitting the east and setting? He suppressed the excitement in his heart, quickly put down the pen in his hand, and got up and walked out of the Xinghe Palace. When he came to Xingyao Hall, he saw that the table was filled with all kinds of delicious food, and Yi Yang was standing aside, looking at him attentively. Zhen Yi feels that Yi Yang's look had goosebumps all over his body. He didn't know why Yi Yang was suddenly so mad. Why was he so gallant all of a sudden? Concubine Yi is really elegant today. You cook so much delicious food. Zhen Yi looked at the table full of delicious food, and his appetite was aroused. Didn't the emperor always say that this concubine's cooking is delicious? So this concubine took advantage of the free time today to cook these delicious dishes in person. Yi Yang smiled flatteringly, making Zhen Yi's back go cold. No matter what, he is diligent. And he is either a traitor or a thief. He is talking about Yi Yang at this time. In order not to affect his appetite, Zhen Yi decided not to ask Yi Yang what he wanted from him. He sat at the dining table and invited Yi Yang to have dinner together. "Concubine Yi, let's sit down and eat together." Yi Yang was not polite at all. He sat next to Zhen Yi and handed the bowl and chopsticks to Zhen Yi. "Your Majesty, eat first." Zhen Yi took the bowl and chopsticks, looked at Yi Yang with a smile on his face, and endured it. He couldn't help saying, "What's wrong with concubine Yi today? You are willing to cook so much delicious food for me. What are you saying, Your Majesty? Didn't I have time before?" Yi Yang, who was in the late stage of lazy cancer, he was actually lazy before and didn't want to cook. Zhen Yi felt very uncomfortable. He really wanted to reply, "When are you out of time?" He clearly didn't want such a bad mood to affect his appetite, but he couldn't help but think in a bad direction. If Yi Yang really had him in his heart, he would definitely think about him every day to please him. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He clearly hated concubines sticking to him before. But now he wants Yi Yang to stick to him every day. Seeing that Zhen Yi was just eating the food in front of him silently, Yi Yang quickly picked up a pair of clean chopsticks and enthusiastically took a piece of braised pork tenderloin for Zhen Yi. "Your Majesty, this is the braised pork tenderloin made by this concubine. You can taste it, good or not. Although Yi Yang's cooking skills are not as good as the chefs in the imperial kitchen, but he has better taste than the chefs in the kitchen. Sweet braised tenderloin with a gleam in his eyes. The feeling of being bored just now improved a lot in an instant, and a smile appeared on his face. It's delicious. As expected of concubine Yi Craft. Of course, don't look at who I am. Yi Yang is a little bit. He was not humble, and accepted Zhen Yi's praise arrogantly. Eunuch Yun on the side was ashamed. He had never seen such a person who didn't understand modesty. After dinner, Zhen Yi in a better mood then asked, "Tell me, do you have anything to ask me?" Yi Yang, who has always been cheeky, was a little embarrassed by the emperor's words. He scratched the back of his head, with an embarrassed face and said, "Your Majesty, can you allow me to go out from the palace tomorrow?" "What are you doing out of the palace?" Zhen Yi looked at Yi Yang in front of him, wondering why this person was leaving the palace again. Yi Yang didn't hide it, and replied truthfully, "Your Majesty, I heard that General Mo is seriously ill, so I want to see it in person." Concubine Yi, do you still know medical skills? Zhen Yi was shocked. Is this Yi Yang omnipotent? How do you know everything? Yi Yang shook his head again and again. I don't understand. I don't understand. You don't understand, so what are you going to see? How do you say this? Yi Yang was confused, then organized the language and replied solemnly. Although I don't know medical skills, but I have seen how doctors sew needles, so I can instruct the imperial physician how to sew needles. Doctor? Needle? Zhen Yi felt that the more he listened, the more confused he became. This doctor is an imperial physician. As for the needle, use a medical needle to sew up the injured wound with thread. Zhen Yi was horrified. You sewed up the wound with a needle. Zhen Yi was covered in hair. How did Yi Yang think of such a terrifying thing? Seeing that Zhen Yi was stunned in place, Yi Yang felt a little nervous in his heart. He was afraid that Zhen Yi would not want to complete Shui Chen and Mo Yan, so he wanted to drag Mo Yan to death. He cautiously asked, "Your Majesty, can I leave the palace?" Zhen Yi came back to his senses and saw Yi Yang's cautious face, so he said with an evil smile on his face, "It's not impossible for you to leave the palace." But he dragged his tail, looked at Yi Yang, and stared at Yi Yang until he was covered in hairs. Yi Yang covered his chest subconsciously, and asked with a vigilant look, "But what do you mean, concubine Yi?" Zhen Yi's face was playful, and his eyes flashed with a strong desire. Yi Yang was sullen and unwilling to reply. "Your Majesty, General Mo is a great general who uses his troops like gods. Do you have the heart to lose such talents in our country?" "In my heart," I thought angrily. "Who made you think of me? Only when you wanted to please me?" Yi Yang really had the heart to hit the wall at this moment. What kind of sin did he do? Why did he have such an emperor? Yi Yang sat in the carriage, lifted the curtain of the carriage, and looked around the bustling streets of the holy city with a pair of eyes. Hearing the shouts of the hawkers on the roadside, Yi Yang felt kind and sighed in his heart. It's still comfortable outside, and even the air is full of freedom. What is this? Zhen Yi on the side asked Yi Yang with a curved needle. Yi Yang turned around and saw Zhen Yi picked up the suture needle, quickly grabbed it and put it in a small and exquisite wooden box. "Your Majesty, this is a medical product. And you can't touch it with your hands. I'm just curious, it's really stingy." Zhen Yi snorted coldly, turned to look at the tweezers next to the suture needle, and asked, "What is this? Why is it so strange?" "These are tweezers, used to clamp the needle," Yi Yang explained. The suture needles and tweezers were temporarily made from silver by the Ministry of Industry yesterday. I won't mention the weird shapes, and they look very unreliable. If it wasn't for the lack of time, Yi Yang would not have let others use this kind of rubbish for Mo Yan. Inflammation to do suture surgery. Although Yi Yang explained the purpose of the tweezers, Zhen Yi still didn't understand it. He looked at the thread next to the tweezers and felt the pain when he thought of the tingling sensation of the thread passing through the skin. Suddenly the carriage stopped. Yi Yang lifted the curtain and saw the general's mansion. He closed the wooden box and got off the carriage with Zhen Yi. Long live the emperor, long live the emperor. Old General Mo, who had been waiting in front of the gate of the general's mansion, knelt on the ground and greeted him respectfully. Get up. Zhen Yi did not make a private visit today, but came to visit General Mo Yan as the emperor, so that everyone in the Holy Dynasty knew that he was a good emperor who loved the country and the people and loved his ministers. Old General Mo stood up tremblingly, bent over and said respectfully, Your Majesty, please. Zhen Yi did not refuse. He strode into the general's mansion, and under the guidance of General Mo, the group came to Mo Yan's house in front of the door. The imperial physician had been waiting for a long time. When he was about to kneel down and salute, Zhen Yi waved his hand and said, No need to salute, now it's important to save General Mo. No matter how good bruises ointment is applied to the wound in front of the inflamed chest, the wound cannot heal. Your Majesty, General Mo has been in a coma for several days. I'm afraid it's. The imperial physician hesitated for a while and didn't say anything, because he saw old General Mo's dispirited expression, and was afraid that saying this would irritate old General Mo. Yi Yang knew that there was no hanging needle in this era, and it was impossible to deliver nutrient solution to patients. So comatose patients could not last for 7 days. Now Mo Yan has been in a coma for 4 days, so the imperial physician said that Mo Yan could not survive. How can you give up lightly before the last moment? Yi Yang pushed Mo Yan's room away, and a strong smell of traditional Chinese medicine came to his nostrils. He frowned as he looked at the dark and damp room with the doors and windows closed. People in this era are like this. They are afraid that the patient will catch the cold and close the doors and windows tightly, which will cause the air in the room to not circulate and cause a large number of bacteria to grow. Which is why the disease of Mo Yan is aggravated. He hurriedly walked to the window, opened the window, and let the air circulate first, dispersing the unpleasant smell of Chinese medicine in the room. Young concubine Yi, you can't do it. General Mo is weak now. Don't suffer from the cold. The imperial physician saw Yi Yang opening the window and hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. Ventilate first, let the air circulate, and reduce the growth of bacteria in the room. The imperial physician listened with a confused look. What is bacteria? Why haven't I heard of it? Old General Mo was hesitant to listen to the imperial physician words, but thinking that Yi Yang had invented so many things before, he should know more than them. Yi Yang didn't explain either. He ordered a few bowls to be sent, poured the alcohol prepared in advance into the bowls, opened the wooden box, and put the contents into the bowls one by one for disinfection. What is this for? Several people surrounded Yi Yang curiously, not understanding what Yi Yang was doing. Disinfect all the surgical items first, keep them free of bacteria. Otherwise, surgery with bacteria-stained surgical products will aggravate the patient's condition. Yi Yang is not a medical student, and he is not very knowledgeable about medicine. He just understood and wrote an urban medical fairy-type novel before, checked medical materials, and barely knew basic things like bacteria. As a professional physician Lu Yi, he didn't understand a word anyway. He wanted to ask, but Yi Yang didn't give him the opportunity to explain the next operation process endlessly. When the imperial physician knew that the necrotic flesh should be cut off with a knife first, and then the wound would be sutured with a needle. The imperial physician felt that Yi Yang was crazy. Is this a joke? How can you use needles to sew wounds? The imperial physician felt that he should not come. If Mo Yan was cured to death, he would definitely be the one who took the blame. Yi Yang said with a serious face, "No joke, you must first use a knife to cut off the necrotic flesh on General Mo's chest, and then sew it on with a needle." "How dare I?" The imperial physician was really frightened. How could he save people like this? "Master concubine Yi, can you tell this old man why you need to sew the wound with needles?" Old General Mo asked seriously. He can understand using a knife to cut the dead flesh, but he can't understand why a needle is used to sew the wound. Because the wound is large and it is difficult to heal, stitches are needed. After the stitches, there is a centripetal force on the wound, which reduces the tension of the wound to help the wound heal as soon as possible. Yi Yang briefly explained. But several people did not understand his explanation. General Mo glanced at Mo Yan, who was dead on the bed. He knew that he couldn't delay it any longer. Since he was going to die, why not die as a living horse doctor? As if he had made a major decision, he said to the imperial physician, "Lu Yi, my son will be handed over to you. Don't have any burdens in your heart. No matter what the outcome is, this old man can bear it." General Mo. Lu Yi stared blankly at old General Mo's ashen face, and he nodded solemnly, "Don't worry. I will do my best to fulfill every order," young Master Concubine Yi said. Yi Yang saw that Lu Yi was willing to cooperate with him. He talked about the details of the stitches carefully. Fearing that Lu Yi would not know how to take up the thread, he even found a thread to demonstrate it. After Lu Yi understood, Yi Yang asked the extra people out of the room, then closed the doors and windows tightly, and began to disinfect the room with alcohol. Which made Lu Yi even more incomprehensible to Yi Yang's act. It was clearly stated before that the air should be circulated, so why should the doors and windows be tightly closed now? Yi Yang didn't explain. After he disinfected the room, he picked up a clean white cloth as a mask and covered his mouth and nose. Lu Yi understood. Because he had seen people in the autopsy room cover his mouth and nose with a cloth to prevent evil from entering his body, so he quickly tied another clean white cloth to his face. After everything was ready, Yi Yang asked Lu Yi to wash his hands with alcohol before starting the operation. Lu Yi treats trauma and has seen too many terrifying wounds. So when he unbuttoned Mo Yan's clothes and looked at the horrific wound on Mo Yan's chest, his expression did not change. On the other hand, Yi Yang, looking at the swollen black wound, felt a little pain in his chest, especially when he saw the necrotic flesh being cut off with a knife by Lu Yi. He was so uncomfortable that he almost vomited. He quickly closed his eyes, not daring to look. Mo Yan, who fell into a deep coma, was tortured by the pain in his chest and tightened his eyebrows, but even so, he did not wake up. Young Master Concubine Yi. The blood can't stop. Lu Yi, who cut off all the necrotic flesh, used sterilized gauze to hold down the bleeding wound. But even if he pressed hard, he couldn't stop the blood from flowing out. Yi Yang turned his head back and looked at the wound that kept oozing blood. He was really afraid that the blood wouldn't stop and would kill Mo Yan. Thinking that Mo Yan would die, he was no longer afraid at this moment. He quickly picked up the gauze to cover the bleeding wound, but it was obviously of no use. So, he hurriedly said to Lu Yi, "Lu Yi, pour alcohol on the wound, can stop the bleeding." Lu Yi was also panicked at this time. After all, Mo Yan's body is very weak now. If the blood can't stop, maybe Mo Yan will die on the spot. When he heard that alcohol could stop the bleeding, he hurriedly picked up the alcohol. All fell on the wound, Mo Yan frowned in pain, his eyelids trembled, and he seemed to be waking up. But because the wound was too painful, Mo Yan, who had not yet woken up, was tortured by the severe pain and passed out. Yi Yang saw that Mo Yan's breathing was getting weaker and weaker, and he was almost unable to breathe. He was so scared that his heart was beating wildly. He was really afraid that Mo Yan would die by their hands. Young Master Concubine Yi, the blood has stopped. Lu Yuyi's surprised voice came over. Yi Yang hurriedly looked around. Although the wound was still bleeding, it was obviously not as exaggerated as before. He let out a breath of turbid air and said, "Then quickly sew the needles." Lu Yuyi responded, holding pliers in one hand, holding a pair of tweezers in one hand. According to what Yi Yang said before, he began to suture the wide-open wound. Even though it was the first time to do it, Lu Yuyi didn't shake his hands at all. After all, he had seen wounds more terrifying than this. Facing this wound that was only 5 or 6 centimeters in size, his expression was as usual, and he looked at Yi Yang, suturing open wounds together. A total of 6 stitches were stitched to this wound. When Lu Yuyi cut off the last stitch, he watched the previously wide-open wound stick together under the action of the thread, and finally understood why the wound was sutured with thread. Even the gaze that looked at Yi Yang changed, and he looked at Yi Yang with admiration. "Where is this Yi Yang secret? Why can you come up with such a good way to treat trauma? If this is used in the military camp, how many wounded soldiers will be rescued?" The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. If he could really save Mo Yan this time, he decided to study this suture technique for the benefit of the warriors of the world. Seeing that the wound was no longer bleeding, Yi Yang let out a sigh of turbid air, glanced at Mo Yan, whose face was as pale as a dead man, and quickly reached out to probe Mo Yan's carotid artery. Seeing that there was still a weak beat, he stood up and said to Lu Yuyi, "The wound has been treated very well. Now it's up to Mo Yan himself. I hope General Mo can get through this difficulty." Lu Yuyi actually appreciates Mo Yan's talent, and really doesn't want the Holy Dynasty to lose a once-in-a-century's generals. Yi Yang went to the water basin, washed the blood stains on his hands, and began to arrange the work afterwards. The thread on General Mo's wound will not be removed until 7 days later, and the wound must be healed. During this period, it must be disinfected with alcohol every day. Young Master Concubine Yi, what is this alcohol? Lu Yuyi saw such a good hemostatic drug for the first time, so he really wanted to know what this alcohol was. Alcohol, or ethanol, is an organic substance and the most common monohydric alcohol. Alcohol is a flammable, volatile, colorless and transparent liquid at room temperature and pressure, with low toxicity. Yi Yang explained patiently. It was a pity that the effect of alcohol was too profound, and Lu Yuyi did not understand it. But when he heard Yi Yang said that he would teach him how to make alcohol, he was incoherent for a moment. You know, such a good formula for treating trauma, no one will easily pass it on to others. Even if it is a master, it is impossible to directly teach the formula to his apprentices. In this way, it will become a vicious circle. And many good treatment formulas for male style have been lost under the change of history. Old General Mo, who was waiting outside the door, was pacing back and forth in the yard anxiously. While Madame Mo looked at old General Mo, who was pacing back and forth. She really wanted to yell at him, but she glanced at the man sitting under the tree who was Jun Yi beside the stone table. She forcibly endured the irritability in her heart. Just when she was so anxious that she wanted to break the handkerchief in her hand, the door finally opened from inside. And Madame Mo rushed over immediately and asked anxiously, "Lu Yuyi, how is my son? The wound is well treated." Now it's up to General Mo's own will to survive. Lu Yi replied politely. As soon as she heard the will to survive, Madame Mo was like an eggplant that was beaten by frost, and she froze in place. If her son had the will to survive, he wouldn't be dragged to the point of critical illness by ordinary arrow wounds. She was about to go in to see Mo Yan, but she saw Yi Yang whispering a few words in Mo Yan's ear. Because of the distance and Yi Yang's low voice, she naturally didn't know what Yi Yang said. After Yi Yang finished speaking, he stood up, opened all the windows in the room, then walked up to Madame Mo, and explained, "Don't close all the windows in the room, you must pay attention to ventilation, let the room the virus spreads out." Madame Mo doesn't know what a virus is, but she knows that Yi Yang won't harm Mo Yan, so she bowed and said sincerely, "Thank you, concubine Yi." "You're welcome, madam. General Mo is a rare talent in our dynasty, and the emperor will not let such a young man die young." Yi Yang said politely, but he was invisibly raising goodwill for Jun Yi. These words are indeed very effective. Madame Mo and old General Mo have more respect for the emperor and a sense of belonging to the Holy Dynasty. After saying goodbye to General Mo and his wife, Yi Yang and Jun Yi got into a luxurious carriage and left the general's mansion. On the way back, Jun Yi suddenly hugged Yi Yang's waist so he almost screamed out in fright, "Fuck! What are you doing?" Yi Yang was so frightened that he looked at the happy smile on his face, "But I don't know why Jun Yi is so happy. I knew that concubine Yi was the best for me." Jun Yi's eyes pierced with a smile, and he squeezed the person in his arms tighter. Yi Yang looked confused, he didn't know what he had done. How could he make Jun Yi so happy? "Let me ask, Your Majesty, what did I do to make you so happy?" Jun Yi didn't explain, he lowered his head and kissed Yi Yang's lips, sucking gently. Why is Jun Yi so happy? All thanks to Yi Yang for that polite remark before. It was obvious that saving Mo Yan was an opportunity that Yi Yang exchanged for his own affairs, but in the end, Yi Yang did not remember the villain, so he generously gave the credit to Jun Yi, so that old General Mo and Madame Mo thank Jun Yi very much. Jun Yi is not stupid. He knows that this is Yi Yang's good feelings for him. If Mo Yan can survive this illness, in the next few decades, the Mo family will not betray the Holy Dynasty. Jun Yi deepened the kiss and asked for more honey. Yi Yang was panting and pushing away Jun Yi, who was getting deeper and deeper. He was breathing in the fresh air. He almost died from lack of oxygen. Yes, if you die because of kissing, isn't that losing the face of the crossing army? Jun Yi hugged Yi Yang again, his forehead resting on Yi Yang's forehead. The smile deepened in his eyes. Okay. His lips covered Yi Yang's again. This time he gently kissed the swollen lips, provoking Yi Yang felt uncomfortable all over, and sighed. I was bent. I was bent by the emperor. The carriage stopped. Yi Yang pushed away the hands that were burning everywhere on him, and hurriedly lifted the curtain of the car, but when he saw the word Yi Mansion, he was stunned. He thought they would go straight back to the palace, but he didn't think that Jun Yi actually let him go home, and his heart was warm. Also he was moved by this little detail of Jun Yi. In fact, he didn't have a good relationship with the original owner's father, but he had an inexplicable affection for the original owner's mother. I don't know if it was because of the original owner's relationship or because of the original owner's mother's selfless maternal love. But no matter what the reason, he really treats this family affection. The next afternoon, Yi Yang received the good news that Mo Yan had woken up, and he was very excited. They actually snatched Mo Yan back from the gate of hell. When Shui Chen learned that Mo Yan was awake, there were tears in his eyes, and he immediately went to the Jinyang Palace to thank Yi Yang for saving Mo Yan's grace. Yi Yang learned that Shui Chen was coming and went out to greet him in person, but he just walked to the yard. Shui Chen came in a hurry. He knelt down to Yi Yang. Regardless of the presence of outsiders, Yi Yang was startled and rushed forward to help Shui Chen, but Shui Chen was stubborn and did not get up. Imperial concubine. What are you doing? Yi Yang was the most annoying of such a big gift, and he quickly called Xiao Doubting to help. Xiao Doubting, come here quickly and help the imperial concubine to get up. Brother concubine Yi, you just if it weren't for you, maybe. Before Shui Chen's words of gratitude were finished, Yi Yang hurriedly interrupted. Imperial concubine, be careful. Shui Chen immediately reacted, thinking that the partition has ears. All grateful after swallowing the words, he stood up, looked at Yi Yang gratefully, and said thank you silently.